Run, river, run, run through the hills. Run, river, run to the sea. Run, river, run to your place beneath the sun. Run, river, run over me.
Hi, this is Jan Lewis. Welcome to be my guest. Today we're going to lighten things up a little bit, give you a bit of a giggle, because so much sad stuff is going on in our country today. But we have Paul Macek with us, and he is an author, and he wrote, don't get crazy, he wrote a kind of a funny, cute book called The Fall of the House of Trump. And it's set up almost like a Monopoly game, right?
It is.
What made you think of this?
Well, the cover is a long story, but to make it short, it went through a lot of different looks.
Yeah.
It started with the Monopoly Man, and that was supposed to be the front cover.
Yeah.
And David Hitch, who was a cartoonist for Worcester Telegram and Gazette,
Yeah.
did most of the illustrations. Did a great job.
Oh, God, yeah.
And the Monopoly Man, we all know the game. And one of the interesting things about the Monopoly Man is Elizabeth Phillips invented the game, but she was a progressive, and she thought that it should show the negative sides of the accumulation of a great deal of wealth. But somehow the game got turned around, and so the front cover started with the Monopoly Man, and then and which I needed for the topic having to do with economics.
Yeah.
And the book is all organized according to topics.
And you got, now Trump is the Monopoly Man in this. And he's holding, I love this, he's holding the card. Keep it light. Get out of jail free.
Get out of jail free.
I saw that like, okay.
Maybe I should send Trump a copy of the book. Let's see if he likes it.
I don't think he reads. Maybe he does. I was looking at it, and you have covered every topic, and with a good sense of humor,
Yeah.
with facts on the election, on education, on free press. We could go on and on. Racism,
Right.
Nuclear war. Now, one of these here is what was the one I loved? Oh, about on education. Cut education. Cut budgets. Cut tuition assistance. More school choice, charters and vouchers. Get rid of gun-free zones. Of course. We must arm even the chipmunks. Tear down union walls. What? Now that part, I didn't know about that. What's that all about?
Well, I think when you look at Trump, he's a product of his environment, and I think Trump never went to a public school.
No.
And so went to private schools all his life. And the Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos, likewise, never went to a public school. And so private schools, and they're great if you can afford private schools.
Yep.
But the idea that public education has no place, and especially in Massachusetts. Massachusetts has such a rich history on education.
Yeah.
Going back to the common schools in the 17th century, Boston Latin, the first school, and Horace Mann, and from Franklin, revolutionizing education. And
What's that one in? Oh God,
Cambridge, Hartford.
Rentham something. King Philip. King Philip's
the academies.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there's a high school there.
There are. Yeah, and I think a lot of the early academies started in Massachusetts as well, in Andover and Phillips Academy, and but I think I started with that topic of education. I thought it was the most important.
Sure.
And it's funny. I have also, the book is organized in such a way that there are marginal notes which express the best thoughts on the topic.
Yeah, from different famous people. I love that.
And I have one thought from David Blight, who is a historian from I forget Yale, and he said that he felt that one of the most dangerous things about Trump is not his authoritarianism, but perhaps his lack of knowledge of history, of democracy, of the Constitution, and maybe that's playing out right now with what we just saw through the impeachment.
Yeah.
But he has made some blunders about understanding history, like when he said Andrew Jackson could have prevented the Civil War.
Yeah.
And,
what was the one about
Frederick Douglass?
planes landing? Somebody in an airport. This is a guy who was back in the 1800s, a politician, and something about we could have gotten them at the airport or something.
I'm not sure
what that one was.
Might have.
But he could read it. I mean, even if Melania could read to him,
Sure.
this is what you need to know. This is cool. And, what was I going to say? Where is this? Keep your sense of humor. These are quotes. Maybe hate is what we need.
He did say that. And that is very frightening.
Yeah.
But that was early in his life. Well, I should say in his midlife.
Yeah.
And I believe that has to do with racism.
Yeah.
And the Central Park Five, where he was very outspoken about the idea that these several African American were guilty of a rape, and actually through DNA they found out that they were innocent. And he had a full-page ad, I believe, in one of the newspapers, was it the Times or the Post, that they should be executed. So it's his knowledge of history and his knowledge just in general really represent a threat. To
I read the bio about him, and I'm not defending him. I'm just saying his upbringing stunk. I mean, his dad was definitely racist. His dad would not rent out apartments to people who were in the minority. So that's where he learned that. He used to follow his father around, which is cool, but he followed him around and he learned from that. His father also told him one time, the world is a dangerous place and you're going to have to, in other words, get everyone out of your way to succeed. Another one was he used to tell Donald, you're a king. You need to look at yourself as a king. And that's what we're looking at now.
I do have a graphic having to do with that, with Woody Guthrie.
Oh.
And Woody Guthrie actually made a song having to do with Trump's father.
Yeah.
And he stayed in one of Trump's buildings, Trump Tower. And he felt that the father was racist in the sense that he wouldn't allow any African Americans to live inside his buildings. So,
can you imagine if it had been different? If Trump had he didn't have a Larry Loving. His mother was kind of a cool cookie. So I can't blame. You can't sit there and say, well, we're all products of how we're raised. And I'm like, this guy didn't have a chance in that family. Mm. And his brother, God bless him, was an active alcoholic, died of alcoholism.
Yeah.
And it seems that the president has the isms without the actual booze.
Yeah.
So he would be called on a dry drunk.
Right.
But again, I'm not blaming him. I'm looking at their family background.
Yeah, their family background. Yeah. I just don't. I've read a few biographies. I did a lot of research. Of course, I read one particular book that I read that relates to education was the one by Bob Woodward when he wrote Fear.
Yeah.
And I do have a quote in the book about his educational background when he, I believe, went to Wheaton College in Pennsylvania. He went and majored in business, and I remember Woodward quoting this passage about the fact that he never went to class, never took a syllabus, never took any notes, never took any notes at all, and actually at the end of the course he would cram, study as much as he could, went into the classroom, take the test, and Woodward said that he's going to be a billionaire, so he gets his C and
he got a C on the test.
On the test, yeah.
That's not too bad though. I mean, he's passed.
Yeah, for not attending class,
I'm
not taking notes, not doing any reading.
Big fat F.
He doesn't like to read.
Yeah, I would have had an F whether I had a roommate in college and she could cram the night before. I said, that's cool. I'll play until I can cram.
Right.
It didn't work for me.
No.
Nice big fat.
Yeah, how did he get the C? I wonder.
I don't understand.
Because, not going to class and not reading the material, not doing any work,
Luck.
and then getting a C. How did he do it? I don't know.
Here's a good one about nuclear war, right? I love war. No way. Nobody loves it. Fire and fury like the world has never seen before. Rocket Man.
Yeah.
This had me cracked up.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's a Democrat or Republican. Anybody who would say, we need unpredictability.
Right.
No, we need steadiness, stableness.
Right.
Oh my, I'm good at war. I too have a nuclear button, but it's much bigger and my button works. Did he say that to Kim Jong-un?
He did. And some of the best minds, like Stephen Hawking, and
My
Noam
son
Chomsky.
loves to read about Hawking.
Hawking is great,
It's
especially
sad that
about
he
black
died.
holes.
It's sad that
Yeah,
he died.
very sad. But they thought that nuclear war and global warming are the two most important issues for the survival of the human species.
Yeah.
And this thing about a nuclear war, I don't believe it has gotten better because of a couple of things. As a matter of fact, I just discovered just a few days ago that the doomsday clock changed by 20 seconds. I don't know, are you familiar with the doomsday clock?
No.
It's in the book.
Yeah.
It's all over the book, as a matter of fact. And
I hadn't heard of this until you started mentioning this.
in 1947, atomic scientists came together and they did this bulletin. And they came up with a symbol. And that symbol would be a clock. And they would assign minutes, the number of minutes closest to midnight.
Yeah.
And that would represent a global catastrophe.
Yep.
And in 1947, I believe they put it at 7 minutes. And then in 1953, there were the United States and the Soviet Union experimented with the hydrogen bomb, and they detonated the hydrogen bomb, and then it went down to 2 minutes. And so it's gone up and down. It's been at 10 minutes, 12 minutes. And since 2017, it's been at 2 minutes.
That means that's all we've got.
That's
Until we
all,
get hit?
yeah, the closer it is to midnight, the worse we should worry about. But just a couple of weeks ago, on January 23rd, the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists came together and they revealed a new time, and they decreased the 2 minutes to 100 seconds.
Wow.
So it's 1 2/3
Yeah.
minutes. So they decreased it by 20 seconds. And the rationale for it was the fact that that world leaders have not come together about dealing with getting rid of nuclear weapons. And there are 9 countries that have nuclear weapons. And even though the United Nations, I think a few years ago, came up with this commission, and they came up with a plan about doing away with nuclear weapons.
Wouldn't that be great? Oh.
It would be, but how do you get the 9 countries to give up their nuclear
Oh, especially
weapons?
Kim Jong-un.
Yeah,
Loves them.
yeah, he's in
He's a piece of work, let me tell you.
in terms of democracy index, which I quote in the book, that's an idea that where you measure how far along you are as a democracy. They're the bottom of the barrel.
Oh, God, yeah. We are talking with Paul Macek, and he has written, for your funny bone and some facts, The Fall of the House of Trump. And you can get a copy downstairs in the library. There'll be a copy there for readers. How else can they get a hold of you and your book?
Well, they can most easily they can use my website, www.paulmacek.com, and there on the website there's also a link to Amazon. So there are bookstores also in the Worcester County area at Book Lovers Gourmet in Webster, at Annie's Bookstore in Worcester. There's also Seven Seas in Cambridge that carries the book. But the easiest way to get it is through my website or Amazon.com.
Paul,
Yeah.
I love the, again, this is all caricatures and some fun mixed in with the facts. We're not taking any sides.
You like the graphics.
Well, I love the fact, but I love how you, I don't say gently, but you took the things that have been legally quoted from Trump,
Right.
and put them down, and then you talk about it, and you have kind of a character.
Right.
Our foreign policy. I know more than the generals do.
I know.
No, I don't think any of our men. I don't
Right.
know.
It's the foreign policy is a danger as well. I think it's he getting back even to nuclear weapons. He said that he doesn't mind if Saudi Arabia or Japan have nuclear weapons, and he seems to be linking himself with dictators.
He loves them. I don't understand that because he doesn't have to be that way.
It's very difficult to understand. As a matter of fact, if you look at the front cover on the White House, the Trump White House with the onion-shaped domes, which was another idea,
Russia.
and his link with Putin and Russia. And Russia is so far away from being a democracy.
I know.
It just recently on the democracy index, I think it was lowered from a hybrid, which is supposed to be a step below flawed democracy, and they threw them into the category of authoritarian. But the one thing that we do have a lot of in terms of democracy is civil rights, and especially a free press.
Yes. Thank God.
Without the free press, the book wouldn't exist. We wouldn't be here. And I do cover the topic of a free press.
Yes.
And I think one of my strongest arguments against Trump, I think, is in that area where I wouldn't mind it so much if he just attacked one particular newspaper covering one particular story.
Sure.
But when he says the press is the enemy of the people, it's attacking the entire institution of a free press. And we have such a rich history on free press. It goes back to even Benjamin Franklin's brother, James Franklin, had a newspaper in Boston, the New England Courant, in the 1720s, said something bad against the governor, and he was put in jail.
Yep.
And so we've had presidents, not only Trump, but we've had other presidents who have attacked the press.
Nixon did, didn't he?
Nixon did as well in the 1970s. It went to the Supreme Court on the Pentagon Papers, and the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the New York Times.
Yeah.
Because they felt that the press represented the governed, not the governors. And but even in our early history, John Adams, our second president, came up with the Alien and Sedition Acts and attacked the press. Woodrow Wilson, during World War I, came up with an Alien and Sedition Act as well. And so
makes you wonder why. Why?
Well, without a free press, I think Jefferson said it best. He said, if it's a choice between having a government and no press, or no government and a free press, he would go with the latter.
I can't imagine not having. I don't care what party you're on. I mean, we have to have the press so that the public knows what's going on.
And I really think that the thing about the free press that's so important is that when you think of free speech, if you take away free press, I don't think you have free speech. If you take away free press, you don't have the right to assemble. If you take away free press, you don't have freedom of conscience. So when you look at a country like Russia that doesn't have a free press, or China, or North Korea, and you know that without free press, they don't have free thought, they don't have free conscience, they don't have the right to assemble. So I think that freedom of the press is so essential. It's a banner
Sure.
for saying that you are a democracy.
Paul, I want to ask you now, what's coming up for you? Where are you going to appear? Let everybody know.
Well, I will be at the Webster Public Library, and I'm trying to think of the date, March 10th. I think it's a Tuesday. I'll be doing a presentation at the Webster Public Library on the book. But I have done...
Book Lovers Gourmet.
Yes,
Tatnuck,
I did Tatnuck. I did author events there.
Yeah.
And I also will be doing some other things as well.
That's good. What did you do before you began writing? What was when you got out of high school and did you go to college after that?
Went in the military.
Which brand?
The United States Air Force.
Oh, my husband was in the Air Force, but I
was
bet
he?
you were right after because he's older than. So you were. Where were you stationed?
I was stationed in California for a couple of years, and then I was in Vietnam for a year, and then came back and I was in Arkansas for about 8 months.
What did you do, like, for a job? What did you choose?
I was in the military police,
Oy,
so
oy.
sort of like the infantry of the Air Force.
Yeah.
I wasn't flying as much as I was on the ground, but once I got out of the military, I went right into college, and I did about 2 years of college while I was in the military as well.
What, did you major in anything different there?
History and English.
I can tell that history and English. I mean,
Yeah, I
you
love
could sit down
history.
with my father, and the two of you. My father was so knowledgeable. You could go back and forth for hours.
Love history.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done, like about 30 years ago, I did early history of Webster, Dudley, and Oxford, which is the first history of Webster and Dudley, second history on Oxford. And then I did a 19th century, Webster, Dudley, and Oxford during the 19th century. And those both took 10 years, so it was a lot of history. And I've done a book on Edgar Allan Poe and Benjamin Franklin.
Awesome.
Two of my favorite Americans.
Well, we're talking with Paul Macek, and he has written a factual, humorous book. Not, kind of fun. The Fall of the House of Trump. Don't think that's a horrible thing. It's just he's kind of showing what some of the history and all is behind it, and some of the quotes. I consult myself on foreign policy.
Oh, God.
I don't know if I would just. That's not maybe the safest thing. What do they sometimes say that we're not all? Oh, I know. When somebody tries to represent themselves in court, you're representing. You're not doing a good job.
Right. Correct.
You have to listen. And then that one of I've taken better care of Puerto Rico than any man ever, and it's throwing a paper towel. I mean, like, I get the humor and all that. It's like you gotta raise up somehow.
There are, it's. I personally, the book I think it's really not about being a Democrat or a Republican or a conservative or a liberal.
Yeah.
I really think the book is more about being an American.
Exactly.
And I try to, but I was heavily influenced by Orwell's 1984 because I think, in some respects, we've started to embrace ideas like 2 + 2 = 5 and alternative facts, and I think that's a danger for our society. And Orwell said it best. And the reason why you find 25 timelines in there is because even in Orwell's 1984, he said, that the history was there and then it was erased, and then you forgot about the erasure of history, and then of course the lie became truth. And so one of the ideas that I had was to put these timelines into the book to reflect the history of the United States. So
There's
when you
so
get
much here. I mean, you have covered. I'll just tell you.
it's a book within a book.
Yeah, it's history with a very smart comic touch. And as you said, it's not Republican or Democrat. It's just
Right.
sort of like they could do this on Obama. I wouldn't care. They could do this on anybody.
Right.
And I think it's funny as hell because the quotes are definite. We know that.
Right,
Okay,
right.
that's. But it's funny how you help people to see around that and maybe have a chuckle.
Right.
You know, really. Now, again, how can they get a hold of your book, Paul?
The book, the best place to get the book would be through either Amazon or my website, www.paulmacek.com. Those would be the best places to get the book.
The best place. Now, it's also going to be a copy downstairs in the Lupton Library. And has you got something else cooking? Do you got another book coming?
No, I'm going to work on this for promoting the book for about a year. You know, I think it's an election year. And the election of 2016 was so controversial. And I believe the election of 2020 will be maybe even more controversial.
I think so, yeah.
And
the other thing is that this caucus the Democrats had, God bless them, but what the heck happened?
what happened, right.
You know?
There's something disturbing happening about elections in America. And I think we're just starting to see the beginnings of it. Some of it has to do with the electoral process. It's not so bad if a candidate wins the electoral vote, wins the popular vote, and that's the way most of the time it happens. But recently, within a generation, we've had 2 elections that have been decided by electoral vote and not popular vote.
I know, yeah.
The election of 2000, where Gore lost to Bush, and then the election of 2016, where Clinton lost to Trump. We might see that again in the election of 2020.
Sure. Already
some of the historians are saying that there's a possibility that whoever the candidate might be from the Democratic side, that he or she may have 3 to 5 million more votes than Trump, and Trump still possibly could win the election
because of the electoral
college. And we have a history of that. We've had, I believe it's happened 3 times in the 19th century. The election of 1824, when Jackson lost to John Quincy Adams. At the end of Reconstruction in 1876, where Tilden lost to Ruther B. Hayes, and then also with Grover Cleveland.
Yeah. See, I didn't know that this has happened before. And my father, I think, used to talk about, he knew politics upside, downside, roundside, and he, the electoral college. We have to close. Well, I could talk with you all day. Paul Macek, author of The Fall of House of Trump, lightweight fun, for everybody. It's really good. And the caricatures, you can tell the person who did it was fantastic. Really, it is. Thank you, Paul, for being with us. And
thank you very much.
Let us know how you're doing. Come on back if you want.
Thanks.
All right. We'll see you next time and be my guest.
Riding on a shooting star, heading out toward a dream. Tomorrow's even closer than it seems. Moving through the cloud